The air-conditioned aircraft imported from China is being modified without hesitation. Just add a car bridge on the chassis. It can be a mobile trailer because the cost of moving this large mechanical device is relatively high and it needs to be remodified with the car the owner considers convenience and transportation costs. And prepare to add a car bridge to the chassis of the air-conditioned aircraft in this way. The tractor can pull the air-conditioned aircraft directly because the car bridge needs to be modified on the floor. The air pressure machine must be supported to a certain height, but because this kind of suspension can only be installed at the tail end of the rear suspension bridge, the head needs to be welded with a similar semi-hanging support angle. So even if the suspension car is separated from the tractor, the support angle can also keep the air pressure machine completely parallel. But the suspension bridge and the bottom of the steel hardware will still shake severely. In order to prevent the parts inside the transport path from being damaged, the master has to cut a hole in the steel structure. The purpose of this is to fix the gear at the bottom, so that the two sets of yellow plates are installed on the car bridge. Because the weight of the air compressor is fixed in the absence of pulling goods, the repair shop also uses 8-hand yellow plates with high cost-performance ratio. Although its appearance looks sleek, but each piece of yellow plate has no change. Because the air compressor is more than enough, use a new horse-drawn spiral press. The two sets of yellow plates are pressed into the frame. For this kind of tow truck without power drive, the masters only need to weld the self-made powerless rear axle to the yellow base. Although it is not the traditional way of fixing the wheel, as long as the weld is strong, there will be no fallout. In order to prevent the tire from being too low, the master will mark the tire size, then use a tool to cut the surface, so that the yellow plate has a certain space to be pressed down after the master cut the same gap on both sides. The bottom part of the work is half done. In order to control the cost of this modification, even the sprockets are used as a second hand in order to facilitate the connection between the rear axle and the rear bridge. All the sprockets need to be fixed to the wheel with the master constantly hammering with the hammer. The sprockets for the Yangtze River seam are also installed quickly. The rear axle only needs to be tightened with a nut. In order to ensure the lubrication of the wheel hub and the shaft, a large amount of oil is applied to the shaft head to avoid internal lubrication causing friction. After the lubrication is completed, the wheel hub and shaft head are connected. When the outer shaft is tightened with the second shaft, it can be locked with a large nut. Although this kind of powerless car bridge structure is simple, the overall installation also takes time because this kind of trailer does not have a brake system. The tire can be installed directly after the internal fixing, but the trailer at this time does not meet the requirement of the front wheel. Under the premise that the head needs a trailer hook, the master will use their reinforced steel plate to make it. In order to make the trailer hook more durable, they will stack the two steel plates. Through welding, it becomes a support, but because it needs to be connected to the bottom of the groove, it needs to be kept parallel. The master has to cut a hole on the beam to make it easier for them to insert the strength of the welding, but because there must be a gap between the connection with the hanging hook, in order to avoid the drop of the road section, a deep tightening nut was fixed inside to facilitate adjustment through the nut, with the master fixing the U-shaped hook through the welding. Now this mobile air compressor hanging car is basically finished, but because the steel plates of the home installation have been rusty, in order not to affect the appearance of this new air compressor, the color of the paint is painted on the surface to make the decoupling function more natural. And after waiting for the paint to dry completely, in order to make the air compressor have a good operating environment, the repair shop also needs to clean the dust inside to restore the cleanliness of the factory. In order to test the effect after modification, it is also necessary to connect the tractor and the decoupling hook with a plug. But it's still easy to pull this 4.6-ton air compressor. So this imported air compressor has been modified. What do you think of the plan of Pakistan Master?